Good morning, everyone. I am the host and creator of Two Podcasts. That's right, Two Podcasts. I run a productivity podcast and I also have a fitness podcast. And here are some things that I have discovered about being a podcast creator. Number one, sometimes you do run out of things to say. And I know there are people who have been listening to podcasts for years, and it seems like there's specific podcasts that just seem to do really well, and they could span years and years and years and years. So before I created the podcast, one of the things I said to myself is, what if you run out of things to say? Then it dawned on me, we are human beings experiencing things in real time. And because of that, we tend to never run out of things to say because every day is never the same. So with my productivity podcast, I've watched how it slowly started out being a specific idea with a specific need. And then I've gradually gotten it to where I feel like the content just makes sense for who I am. And so if you ever think you're going to run out of things to talk about, trust me, you will not. They're just different things that you learn and you grow. For instance, every season I end it by talking about college grads, things that they should look out for, things that I have seen that help me, things people have told me. And every time I have a season and I end it with that podcast episode here, I always think to myself, oh, gee, golly, maybe they've already heard all these things. And then you realize, no, they haven't, because now you're getting new information each year. Your career has changed, evolved. You've gone through job losses. You've gone through so many things. And now you can share it with that mass of people who find it interesting to tune in and hear how they can succeed after college graduation, or just to hear what it's like when you've graduated. And some of us are just clueless as to what to do next. We might have a career, but we are still trying to figure out who we are. So no, you're never going to run out of things to say. We're just human beings, and we evolve and we change, and we just have lots of different experiences. And I bring that into the podcast. Secondly, is it okay to change your ideas from the initial production? So for instance, if you started a podcast and you're like, I want to talk about cooking, and in time you're like, I hate talking about cooking, or I don't want to deal with having to talk about recipes and things like that, etc. Is it okay for you to change your podcast? Well, there are two ways to answer this question. Do you absolutely hate talking about cooking, or do you just hate talking about specific areas of cooking? Here's what I mean. So if you only hate specific topics about cooking, perhaps you slowly graduate your podcast into it just being specific types of cooking ideas. Maybe you're just concerned with best utensils to use in the kitchen or best recipes. Before, you might have had a general idea about a cooking podcast. Now you can say, you know what? I really just like talking about this specific thing about cooking. And then you can slowly graduate your podcast to that without ever having to change a podcast name or title if you want. For me, I started out with Living the Life podcast in 2020, and I slowly found that I like to talk about just productivity in general, and it merged into the Productivity Pro. I did change the title. I did not have a new podcast. I continued to build on the idea of what I already started. And I wanted it to be specific to guests who come on the show, because in the past, a lot of guests that I had were great, and some just came to the show not really having an idea of what they wanted to talk about. So there was no speaking point that people that were listening to go back and say, hey, let me reach out to this person because they had a great idea. And the Productivity Pro podcast is more of, I have a guest or I have a topic, and then I have information from my guests or my listeners where they can go and find that information. Or maybe they heard a guest who does a specific thing, but that guest also is allowing people to go to their LinkedIn page, their website, to find out more or to gain knowledge. So that's why I changed it, so that people don't feel like they can just come out and chat. There's a gossip podcast for gossiping or just telling stories. That's not for me, and that's okay. So that is how I was able to change, but it's absolutely okay to change your podcast idea along the way. As long as you stay consistent with what you're doing, people are going to continue with you. Now, and if you decide, scratch that, I don't like anything about this podcast, I want to start from start to finish, that is fine. Just remember, you're rebuilding your audience when you close out a podcast. And now you're trying to redirect people who already have a short attention span and millions of podcasts in the podcast world. You're now trying to regenerate that same traffic to a new podcast. It can take a while. So for my instance, when I created the fitness podcast, it wasn't because I didn't want to talk about productivity, but I didn't want my fitness life to be in the productivity podcast. So I created a fitness podcast just to talk about fitness, bodybuilding, what has worked for me, what has worked for other people. But that one is more, you're just hearing my voice and no guest or any outside influence. But generating traffic for that new podcast was a different ball game, and I wanted it to grow slowly. So those are the two top things that I have found out about being a podcast host and creator and producer. But you let me know, what are some things that you have discovered on your journey to being a podcast host or creator, or some of the things that you feel podcasts are missing? I feel like every podcast now has everything you can think of, and now it's just about tailoring it to specific audiences. You definitely want to love what you're talking about. You don't want to be talking and then you're like, wow, I really find that this topic is boring. So make sure you love it with passion, because it's not a career you go into because you're going to make millions, unless you have advertisers, sponsors, and those things are going to come. But mind you, you're going to have to talk for months, years before it gains that much traction for you to say, I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 so I can focus on my podcasting. Well, that's all I have for you. Stay tuned for more how-to podcast episodes.